So Divic 91 has exposed the fact that a lot of people can't think independently and critically, and they just succumb to groupthink and parroting other people's bumper stickers, like anti-thingamajig and conspiracy theory and all of this kind of just nonsense. So what's brought that about? Well, last time I talked about the role of the exam system in composing these kind of compliant rule followers, but I think we can't ignore what the teaching profession has done. What goes on in schools, how your kids are being taught, it should be of concern to you. And I say this with some authority, given that I taught for 35 years, 4 places in the UK. The places in the UK was a mixture of state and private, and really there wasn't that much difference in terms of ethos. Both are affected by this kind of PC virus. Okay, the other place, I taught in Finland for 2 years, which was completely different. So starting things off, really, we're a product of our own experiences. So for me, my point of reference is always the education that I got. So as a kid, I went to a state comprehensive school in Rochdale called Alderhill, and I was taught, I remember 2 teachers in particular, this guy called Ronnie Todd, who taught physics, and another guy called Mr. Gould, Ian Gould, who was a history teacher. Both of them were fantastic because they both were really good at developing young people into being independent, critical thinkers. People who they wanted students to be articulate and to have ideas of their own, and they loved nothing more than a no holds barred open debate. That's what those guys really, really loved. In fact, one of the tactics that both of them used was provocation. They both would go out of their way at times to just say like openly outrageous things that would get them fired today in like 2 nanoseconds. But what these guys realized was that by provoking us, it was going to get us to think, and it was going to shake us out of the kind of groupthink narratives that were being pushed at that time. So I've got an example of that. One of my friends at school was this guy called Daryl, and he was just like a classic middle-class parrot. So he was very anti the IRA, and the troops should stay in Northern Ireland, and basically all he did was just parrot the BBC's line, and that's it. So anyway, one day Gould and Toddy took us to it was the only this was the only time in my school career that I was taken to the theatre, and it was a fringe production in Rochdale run by a bunch of Irish Catholics who were IRA sympathisers. And Gould and Toddy did this to provoke us. They wanted us to be offended because then that would force the cogs inside our brains to do some work. And through our kind of sense of being outraged, we would have to, first of all, sort of marshal some arguments, like work out in our own heads what exactly was wrong with these viewpoints that had been expressed to us that we'd never heard before. And then once we'd done that, we had to kind of like articulate, our logic. So they really, really forced us to think. Now, the other thing as well that they used to do, which I really appreciated at the time, was most Sundays, me and my mates, we would go to the local pub on an evening time, just for a couple of beers, 4%, whatever. And this started like when we began in the sixth form, and Gould and Toddy would often turn up, about 9:30, 10 o'clock, just before last orders, and they would love to just come and buy us a beer. Again, these days, if they did that, they would get fired. But I think they liked us because we had a bit of spirit, and we would engage in banter with them, and they would often sort of sit in. They would listen to us as well. That was another critical thing that's very, very different today. is that teachers back then, the good ones, they actually listened to what the students had to say, and then they would use their own brains and argue back, or ask some excellent questions that were designed to get us to think. So basically, what's gone wrong? You don't really get many teachers like Gould and Toddy. They're, if I was to be immodest, I think that's what I tried to do when I was teaching. But these days you're just going to be drummed out of the profession in five minutes. As some of you know from watching this channel, I quit over kind of the COVID sort of nonsense. But I don't think I would have lasted too much longer teaching economics, because so much of what you teach in economics somebody could take offence to, and again, it's all about, I firmly believe this, is that lessons shouldn't be too comfortable for students. Students should be challenged with ideas that they might find unsettling, because it forces their brains to think. Okay, so just an example of it. It might be in economics, the topic of demerit goods, which is a load of Keynesian twaddle. But to make it worthwhile teaching, you could look at a demerit good. By the way, is something that some government bureaucrat thinks that you overconsume, and it's worse for you than you think, or that's what they allege anyway. It might just be that you've got different tastes and preferences to the central planner, but that's off the syllabus. Not that would stop me from teaching that, of course. Anyway, so you could look at fast food, couldn't you? As an alleged demerit good. People don't realise how calorific it is and how bad it is for your health, allegedly. So, you could sort of branch this out a debate. You could say, well, should the state restrict people's diets for their own good? Do we actually have bodily autonomy? If you were to say to some students, as a thought experiment, would it be legitimate for the government to force feed anorexics? These days you would get disciplined for that. The whole idea of bodily sovereignty and private property rights, I would have thought that's actually quite an important issue that students should discuss. But no, you can't discuss that now. Completely off the agenda. Even in obviously allocation of scarce resources between competing uses is what economics is about. So these days, I remember there was an exam paper question about cancer care. Well, you couldn't use that anymore. Not in the classroom, because somebody in that classroom would be offended because they would have a relative who maybe died from cancer. And if you use that question, and that student, they've just been hardwired towards complaining, and then you get pulled over the coals for it. So, basically what you're looking at now is, to survive in the teaching profession, you just have to be completely bland and boring. And you just end up I suppose it's another example of the demise of free speech. I remember having lunch with this kind of let's call him a modern teacher, with a modern, and he was all for oh, you libertarians, you believe in free speech, but hurty words are as bad as a punch in the face, and the government has got to control what comes out of your mouth. And guys like him are always the first ones to put their hands up and volunteer to be the arbiter of what does and what doesn't constitute hate speech. And the thing that these people are in control of education, that's the big kind of takeaway message. So there's no free debate anymore in schools. The Overton window of debate is very, very narrow. So another example would be, there was a democratically elected president of the United States that wasn't very popular with the senior management team of a school that I used to work in. And, there was all sorts of like completely clownish presentations, done on a PowerPoint in front of 600 people of, the democratically elected president of the US, in a cartoon sitting on the Great Wall of China, or just complete nonsense. And the Overton window on this president was very narrow. We were allowed to debate him, but it was on one extreme it would be, well, you could call him a white nationalist or something, or you could call him a fascist, and that was the acceptable parameters of debate. He was either a white supremacist or a fascist, and if you had anything else to say about that democratically elected president of the United States, then you were shut down immediately, and you were ostracized, and you would be coming for some heavy fire, and people would attempt to silence you and cancel you. So basically modern teachers, they don't really listen to students' views. They're not interested in what students have got to say. The only time is to sort of make sure that they're not saying any wrong thing. This is, again, for me, it's sad, but the Divock 91, it's not really a surprise that we're heading towards totalitarianism, because, history's pretty clear on it. You can either have free speech or totalitarianism. Once you control what people can say, you limit debate, and that's it. What else? What else did I want to say? Yeah, and I suppose the other things that I wanted to say was that kids aren't stupid. There's a lot of jobs being lost. It's much harder these days to get your degree in geography from a Russell Group university and get, a job that's secure and is going to give you a middle-class lifestyle. So kids are kind of they're more hardwired towards results, in terms of exam results, or being head boy or head girl or whatever. So what the kids learn is unthinking, blind obedience. They know that if they repeat bumper sticker mantras that their head teacher pumps out, like XYZ is a racist, XYZ is a sexist. What other bumper stickers have we got? Anti-Britney Spears, conspiracy theory, what else? White privilege, fascist, racist, all of these things. This is what you've now got. You've got bumper stickers. That's all that kids can express, is just these bumper stickers. And that has replaced coherent, rational, independent thought. Very, very sad. So this is what kids are. They've sussed it out. It's like, well, okay, I want to be head boy, I want to be head girl. Right, so don't rock the boat. Just hug the consensus. When I get asked something, just remember what the right bumper sticker is to articulate at that point, and all will be well. So kids, they've just learnt that the way to get on is unquestioning, blind obedience to the narrative, parroting other people's opinions. And this is why, I can't help but think, this is why there's growing mental health problems amongst young people. It's bloody boring just repeating other people's ideas and not having any arguments of your own, and just repeating what's acceptable so that you're not ostracized and cancelled. What else? That's it. I suppose you can't really blame the kids for what's happened. It's more the teaching profession. It's this sort of authoritarian mindset, and the role of schools is to regulate speech so that students leave with the right opinions and with the right values, and that basically means shut up, obey the rules, don't question anything, and repeat the in vogue bumper stickers, so anti-what's it, conspiracy theory, far right, all of these stuff that I've already said already. So that's basically what I wanted to say. There needs to be massive changes within the education system, and I said at the very beginning of the video, it's not like the private sector is any better. In some ways it can be even worse depending on who is in charge of the school. And they just crush young people. Toddy and Gouldy never crushed me at all. They challenged me, they offended me. That was great. They helped me to develop. That was their job. And it wasn't about me wasn't about them indoctrinating me with their opinions. They respected me as a person, and I guess there was some love there, in a broadest sense of the word. Anyway, blah blah blah. You can see again, it's a beautiful day, bright blue sky. It's -14, but I've spoken for 15 minutes without a glove on. So again, there's no wind, you see, so that makes a huge difference. Okay, Merry Christmas. In Finnish, that's Hyvää joulua. Oh, blimey, what a tongue twister. And I'll see you again. God bless.